I want to welcome everybody. It is great to have such a great group here tonight. I want to welcome you all to the Nebraska Cattlemen Cattle Edge Producer Education webinar. My name is Benita Lettier, Director of Producer Education with the Cattlemen. We at the Cattlemen are very excited to be hosting our webinar tonight in partnership with Settje Agri-Services. Just a quick update on the Nebraska Cattlemen. We are busy working on things for our members. You will find us working on legislative affairs. We are a grassroots organization working for our members strong. Regulatory affairs, producer education programs. If you are a Nebraska Cattlemen member, I want to thank you for your membership and hope that you get involved in one of the local affiliates across the state. If you want to know and catch up on things that we're doing, make sure you check out our website and follow us on social media. And we need your help to keep us growing strong. If there is something that you would like us to be working on, please reach out to a staff member and let us know. Some quick housekeepings for tonight before I turn it over to Jake and Kip. We're going to be using either asking your questions via the Q&A box. Down at the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A box. At any time, if you would like to ask our presenters a question, you can type it in there. If your question is something that you would like to ask live, you can raise your hand. So down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see raise hand. And we want to do a test run of that right now. So if everybody wants to raise their hand and show us there, we go. Everybody's finding it. Perfect. So at any time, these guys want to hear from you. If you have a question, raise your hand and I'll let you know that I've unmuted you, and then you will be able to ask your question. If you have any problems during the webinar, you can text me or call me. My number is on some of your communications that you've received. It's 402-450-0223. And we will be recording the webinar tonight, and it will be up on our website sometime tomorrow morning. So if there's something you want to review, if you want to share it with somebody that was supposed to be here and couldn't make it tonight. So again, welcome. Really excited to have you all here. I'm going to turn it over to Jake and Kip. I know they are anxious to get going and get started and share the information with you tonight.
All right, thanks, Benita. I appreciate all the work you do for the Cattlemen, and very much appreciate you having us here tonight. And to all of you all out there listening to us, thank you for being here too. It's been an interesting year and some unusual circumstances. And we're all tired of hearing that. But one positive for this is, and this webinar series that Nebraska Cattlemen's done is we're certainly reaching some places tonight that there's no way we would have had the ability to do that by other means. And so we're super grateful to be with you guys. My name is Jake Mayer. I am not Dean Settje. Some of the advertising for this advertised the Dean was here. Due to a last minute schedule change, Dean ended up in a tropical climate on a business trip. And he's got some things going there, and we're excited about those projects, but you're stuck with me and Dr. Kip tonight. So we'll get this thing started. Like Benita said, our vision is that this is more of a dialogue and a discussion, and I'm going to try and guide us through that. But if there's things that you want to ask us or know about, I'm trying to watch the Q&A box and keep everything straight. But Benita, again, don't feel free to stop me if there's somebody that has a question. So just a touch of background about me. I have my degrees are in agricultural engineering. I went to Iowa State for my undergraduate degree. I had a major professor who was a PhD student at Iowa State. He promised me that if I moved to Mississippi with him to start his research program, that the weather would be warmer and the girls would be prettier. My wife is from Flora, Mississippi, so he held up his end of the deal. When I finished my master's work, I started here with Settje Agri-Services, 2011. I am a licensed professional engineer. A little bit about Settje Agri-Services. Our company was founded as an engineering firm that dealt with environmental permitting and regulations. And it's over the last 20 plus years, it's grown into a lot of other things, including regulatory compliance, manure marketing. We have a construction division, get involved in a lot of cool projects, almost exclusively all livestock, multiple species, but pretty much all livestock. Personally, I mentioned my wife, Katie, is a school teacher, and we've got 3 kids at home. They are almost 1, 3.5, and 5. So it's keeps us busy. Just one point of clarification, even though I am an engineer, I do not wear a pocket protector. You can see that. I do not know how to use a slide rule. So just 2 interesting tidbits about myself. I'm also very fortunate tonight to have with me Dr. Kip. It's Lucas Savage, right, Kip?
That's right. That's
All
good,
right.
Jake.
That's not a French name, is it?
We don't get all blessed with mayor
No, that's right.
or Smith.
So Dr. Kip is a veterinarian with production animal consultation. They oversee and provide services for a good chunk of the cattle in the United States. Dr. Kip's probably the real expert here, but we're gonna try and tag the team this together. Anything else that the people should know about you, Dr. Kip?
Oh, just I guess from my experience, if people ever heard of Bud Williams, that's and Tom Knopfsinger, those were my 2 mentors. Hence the name of the Bud Box and those types of things, or Bud Tubs, or things that they've heard of. I was really privileged just to have that opportunity, Jake, early in my career, to be able to surround myself with really a lot better people than me, and not be afraid to take advice and learn and change. It's definitely helped me as a veterinarian, but more so just as probably more so as a dad and as a stockman today. I always tell people today I'm probably a better stockman than I am a veterinarian. So and that's a good thing. So.
Well, I definitely appreciate you coming along from the ride here with me tonight. So thanks, Dr. Kip. I've got my marketing manager sitting in here with me, and he gave me some stuff to give away. So we're going to practice this raise your hand thing just real quick. So I've kind of seen some of the statistics on who's registered for this, but go ahead and raise your hand if you're not from Nebraska. Benita, do you want to close them out?
Okay.
Thank you. And it looks like it's well over about half of you are coming from other places. This map, a friend of mine that's at Kansas State in the Ag Econ department does some cool stuff with USDA maps. And so this map is actually hay production for the United States based on USDA statistics. So I like to use different maps. I know there's actually a few Canadians, I think, joined us tonight. And so thank you for being here also. You're not on this map. So I've also got some stuff to give away. And so if you would, as we're going through here, figure out how far away you are from Raymond, Nebraska, R-A-Y-M-O-N-D. And you can put that in the chat, or in the, that's probably the best place to put it. Put it in that chat box. And the 2 furthest away tonight, we'll mail you a hat tomorrow. We'll do that. And then I also want to do the closest. So if you work for Settje Agri-Services or you work for Nebraska Cattlemen, you don't count. I know there's some of you guys out there too. If you're from East Central Nebraska, go ahead and put your mileage in there, and we'll figure that out, and we'll get a couple coffee tumblers sent your way too. So thank you again all for joining us tonight. All right, so before we get too far into this, I want to establish some expectations. I'm happy you're here, but if you signed into this tonight because you thought Kip or I had a magic bullet that we were going to give away, you may be a little disappointed. Benita, did anybody sign off? Is everybody still here? Nobody left on me, did they? All right, good. So all joking aside, there really is no right or wrong way to do this. But I personally believe that there is a best way to do it on your operation and a best design in your situation. There's no two operations that are identical. And so the working facilities should not be identical either. Now there's some concepts that we see repeated, but each scenario is different. And so that's really what makes my job fun, is I get to work with producers to customize solutions that fit your specific objectives, constraints, your goals. And that's really a lot of fun. This chute that I show in this picture is actually on one of Mississippi State's research farm. And it's not very impressive to look at, but we worked some cows through there, and it worked all right. And we had a good crew to do that. For me, I think about cattle, working cattle, as a three-way interaction between the people, the animals, and the facility. And so that infrastructure just plays a part of the puzzle. And really, it takes all three of those things to be successful. As an engineer, I can do a lot of innovative things, but I've never been able to design a facility where the cattle work themselves. So there's a lot of facilities that look just like this that you use every day, and they work just fine because the people using them have those good stockmanship skills. And we can overcome a lot of inadequacies, if we will, on the facility side by being good stockmen and good stock women. On the flip side, I've seen some really nice facilities that really maybe don't work all that great, or they have some issues with them. And sometimes that's because of the people using them. Really, for us, our most successful projects are the ones where we build a relationship with our customers and we get a good marriage between the design of the facility and the management style of the team that's using the facility. That is really the sweet spot. So I've been privileged over my career to design and build working facilities that were pretty elaborate. Some of them had price tags of $1 million plus. But that doesn't make sense for most of the cattle operations in the United States. And so I wanted to share with you a story about the smallest project I actually ever did. So I got a call a couple years ago from a neighbor. My neighbor's name is Dave, and Dave and his son sell red Angus replacement heifers. They have a few cows and they raise some themselves, and they buy some heifers to breed. But when Dave called me, he was actually still out of breath because they had just got done loading a pot of cattle, and it didn't go very well, and so poorly, in fact, that the part of their loadout setup that survived the experience, Dave was tearing it out with the payloader while he was talking to me on the phone. It was a wreck, and he had it, and it was time to do something else. So I let him cool down for a couple of days, and I stopped by, and we talked about a few ideas and some things that he wanted to be able to do. I gave him a few suggestions, and And I went home and I honestly, I kind of forgot about it for a while. And about 2 months later, Dave called me again, and they had repeated the same process, right? They had just loaded another pot of heifers to go to somebody. And it worked really slick. Their new setup was great. And I hadn't done anything special, but I had helped him kind of think through the process of what he had learned from the setup that didn't work and what he was trying to do. And it just was sort of that thought process that really enabled him to sort of wrap his mind around what he wanted, and ultimately something that he was happy with. And I took a lot of pride in being able to help him be successful. And that's really what I want to do as an engineer for Settje. I want to help you, whether you have a few cows or 1,000 cows, or you manage a 50,000 head feed yard. I want to help you think through that process of designing a facility, provide input where I can. But I didn't give Dave a magic bullet, and I probably don't have one to offer you either. But I think that there's some thought processes that we go through, maybe as more so as engineers, that really kind of help guide us through this process. I'll also share with you that the best part about the story with Dave is how he paid me for my time and expertise. And just mysteriously, there was a couple cases of Busch Light showed up in my refrigerator one day, and they were from Dave. And so that's normally not our fee schedule for Settje Agri-Services, but we made a deal for this project. So,
Hey, Jake, there was a Kevin, and I apologize if I mispronounce your last name. I think it's Kevin Hoagie. He asks, what chutes or alleyways are better, see-through sides or closed sides?
well, I'm super glad he asked, because I'll just advance the slide and we'll talk about it for Kevin, if that's all right with you. So we get that a lot. What's the best chute? And again, this is maybe a politician's answer, but I'm not aware that there is a best one. There's certainly advantages to both systems. Dr. Kip's smirking. I think I probably have an opinion, but I'm not sure that I can just generally say that if you don't use a silencer chute, then your cattle aren't going to grow like that. It's just not realistic. So I hopefully maybe that helps.
I think, yeah, what's appreciative about that answer, Jake, is that and maybe Kevin's also asking about the louvers and those types of things, and this true solid or true open. I certainly have opinions, and I would always tell you that it really depends on the handlers that are chute side and their knowledge of the animals in which they're working with, and if their understanding of how to get one to go forward and how to get one to back up and so forth. Obviously, then if you have that knowledge, then some open sides maybe not such a bad idea, but chutes where you have the ability to remove the louvers if you so wish, or keep them on, I think is a good option. And you're right, it doesn't necessarily, if you're having trouble getting cattle to come into your chute, you may need to make adjustments to the bottom of the chute if it's pinched in too tight, to where cattle, if you always think about prey animals, that they like to have a wide base when they want to move. And so if you have the bottom pinched in too tight, that'll adhere or prevent them from coming forward sometimes. So, and then as we've worked together on chutes where cattle have to take a step up to get into the chute, is understanding that cattle have really poor depth perception. And so their ability to judge depth takes some time sometimes for each individual. And so chutes that are basically recessed, or it's kind of like appears as a straight floor coming from the alley into the chute, tend to work really well. Sometimes when cattle have to make that step up, though, they balk just a little bit. So I don't know that it's truly built around open and closed. It's just kind of whatever your preference is, I guess, and what you're comfortable with.
So I'm going to interrupt you guys. Jake,
Yep.
Kevin, I've unmuted you if you want to further ask your question.
You hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Yep, we can.
I'm not so worried about the chute, but the alleyway in front of the chute or behind, is it better to have open sides or closed sides so they go all the way forward and not look out the side? It's not so much the chute, but the alleyway.
Okay, sure. Leading up to it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Kevin.
And I
Answer that, Jake, or
yeah, well, I think our answer is going to be the same too. Is depending on your preference and how you want those cattle to react to you or react to the surroundings. So sometimes where we use the solid sides is maybe in an area where we have lots of distractions, and we don't want those cattle, looking off or getting frightened or something because there's external things on the site, that are going to influence the way those cattle act and react to the human pressure or the positive pressure you're trying to put on them.
Yeah, and I would just say there too is Jake, you're right on that. Is so if you have trucks or a lot of traffic coming by your processing area, then that can be a disturbance. The other thing is we'll sometimes put solid up where we want to take the vision away from cattle and redirect their vision to where we want them to see. So the one thing there, Kevin, that I would always encourage you to think about is that cattle are prey animals, and so they do love to see what's pressuring them. So taking their sight away, the only reason cattle would ever jump in a solid alley is because they're just trying to see out. That's the only reason they're really going to jump up. So when we think about those things, it's just providing them sight is important, as long as you're providing them a site where you want their focus to be. If there's something that's distracting them, that's taking their focus off of what you want, then I would close that up so that you can redirect their sight.
So just real quickly, I appreciate the question, Kevin. We'll just kind of try and keep moving through here. Dr. Kipp was talking about the recessed chute. I think you can see my cursor, but this is a Daniel chute, and it is, you can kind of tell here that instead of having that platform elevated that the cattle step up into, the concrete there is recessed so the feet sit down, and that's a sort of a continuous plane. So there is no step up or step down into that chute. That chute is really kind of one of 4 usual key pieces that we get lots of questions about. So that's kind of the main one. I use the word funnel here. I'm not sure that's really the right word, but in order to get cattle into the chute, we've got to have some sort of system to take them from a large group to a smaller group to an individual animal. One of the ways that we do this is with a bud box and alleyways. We also use tubs. We can use bud tubs, which is a sort of a hybrid of those two systems. Again, there's some component that allows us to take those animals and direct them in the right direction.
I've got Brenda with a question here.
Yes, go ahead. Hi, Brenda, you're unmuted. You can ask your question.
I wonder if Brenda is using two technologies on us tonight. Why don't you move on and I'll see if I can
Okay.
get Brenda's question.
Sounds good. Yeah, she lives in the middle of nowhere, so it's possible. All right. So kind of as we step further back, there's going to be some sort of network of pens, alleyways, gating, both to get cattle into our system and get cattle out of our system. And that can be, you know, a simple alleyway. Sometimes it's one large pen. Sometimes that's just a portable corral, right? I mean, it's accomplishing the same purpose there. So, but obviously lots of configurations, lots of setups to allow you to do different things, right? There's some operations that do lots of sorting. There's some operations where they don't maybe sort cows from calves or bulls from heifer calves, but that's a very limited piece of their operation. So their system is much simpler than somebody that's putting together large groups of cattle and sorting them 8 different ways and the like. So that's a piece that we get lots of questions on and spend lots of time thinking about and thinking through. And then the fourth thing that's kind of usually a big topic of discussion is what do we do as far as shipping and receiving cattle, and what does that look like? So Kevin's question earlier, we've got some loading chutes that are solid sided. I got one that's for a stock trailer, right? There's plenty of operations that may rarely, if ever, load a semi, right? So let's think about what size trailers are we using and build our system to accommodate those. You know, not everybody's loading 3 semis at one time every day. It's just not the reality. But there's concepts in that. Again, we're working in a bud box here to a loadout. So some staging pens. All the components are kind of the same. So staging or holding pens, sorting pens, some kind of mechanism or structure to funnel those animals down into that chute, and then a system to, you know, to bring those back into your production setting.
Jake, Timothy Norrell has a question of how big does your bud box need to be depending on what you're working on what you're working cows / calves. So how big does your bud box need to be depending on what you're working cows, calves? So
I'll let you correct me if I'm wrong here, but what I normally try to do here is the size of my bud box is dictated as much by the length of my alleyway in front of it, because I always want to keep an animal in the chute, and I kind of want to have one waiting so that when I bring that next group of cattle and they make the loop around the bud box and they get headed down the alleyway, they're following that second animal. As the first one leaves the chute, the second one's going into the chute, and this new group is following them in. And then on the back end, I want them all to be able to get in the alleyway at the same time, so that there's not 1 or 2 strays that I have to deal with and sort of isolate that they all fill the alleyway, and then I can go and get another, and then I go get another bunch. So that dictates sort of that bud box size as much as anything.
Yeah, I like to, and that's a good answer, Jake. I always like to think about it in terms. I used to tell people, you know, if your alleyway can hold 8, then bring 8. But then I would get people where, say, if we were in a cow-calf situation like what I think Timothy is asking there, if I told you to bring 8, then obviously there's a different size or metric of animal there. So So I started thinking about how many pounds can my alleyway hold? And if that alleyway can hold 5,000 pounds, well, then that means I can bring 10 500-pound calves, or I can bring 5 1,000-pound cows, if those ever exist anymore. I don't know that they do, but it might be 3 1,400-pound cows instead, I guess. But you know, regardless, I think about now you're right. The bud box, or even a tub system, whatever you're using, it's not a storage device, it's a guiding device. And when we start using it as storage devices, we lose our momentum or our energy of the stock in terms of that movement. And when we lose movement, it's really hard to restart it in a tight area. And so it's always a lot easier if you have that movement started and it enters the bud box or it enters a tub, to where it can continually go around and fill the alley, and cattle keep moving and the energy is there. When that energy stops, it's really tough to move. So size wise, I guess if he's looking for dimensions or stuff like that, I don't know. What do you commonly build today, Jake, as far as
Yeah.
your, you're saying like you're in a 40-foot alley, for example.
Right. Yeah. A lot of times, especially in a processing barn scenario, we will use like 16-foot wide overhead doors. So you've got a 14.5-foot alleyway. And so that bud box is something like 14 to 15 wide, and it's 30 to 36 long. That's one that ends up in a building. The other thing that I would add to that is some of it depends on whether that bud box is leading to a chute or whether it's leading to a trailer. So the other thing, we usually see bigger bud boxes when we're loading, whether that's a stock trailer or a semi. So if you're putting 15 head in the belly of a pod, or whatever that amount is, or you've got a big long trailer, I want my bud box to sort of accommodate. I don't want to have to sort 2 groups in my bud box, but I want to make sure that I don't have to bring 2 groups to fill my trailer either. And so sometimes there's a relationship there. So are we getting more questions?
Yeah, we are. Matt Ulrich has a question of, what's your opinion on length of double alley compared to the single portion of the alley? I like to think of the tub or box as pass-through pens, and I like that, Matt. Yep, I do too.
Yeah, obviously. So, and Matt's is involved in equipment manufacturing, and so some of that is a little bit dependent on what is the sort of standard size of equipment that's available. It's when we start talking about custom building equipment, it gets a little expensive. And now some of it is just kind of pipe corrals or fencing corrals, and they're we've got a little bit maybe some more options, but so a lot of what we see is like 40-foot alleyways. So you're basically half in a double and half in a single. That's a very common size. We've done them longer, double and single on both ends and in total length, but that's a real common, is kind of about 50-50, half in the double, and your neck down point to the single is about halfway. So
yeah, and on the double alley compared to the single alley portion, Jake, I would always just make comment that I'm a short guy, and so my arm length to reach over to that long side is really so my ability to interact with the animal on that far side is less. And sometimes when I need to create pressure for movement, then that it's really necessary to be there. So I think double is great for encouraging animals to come in and to commit. Then after that, just single is good enough. You know, we have yards where they have 40 foot of single or 60 foot of single in front and a 14-foot double. And, but that's just an opinion. I've worked in many or both of those, and I can tell you which one I get more frustrated in at the end of the day.
Kip, do you guys have any data on what percentage each side gets used? It's so we know it's not 50-50. What does that number look like?
I would tell you that about 90 to 92% of them, and about 90% of stats are made up just by the way too. So, but about 90 to 92% of them will typically go down that far alley, and a lot of that depends, Jake, on where you're standing in the bud box, or where you're positioned, even alongside the alley if you have like a tub type facility. And so, if you're tight to that inside alley, they're always going to more commonly take the far alley away from you. However, I just worked some calves here 2 days ago that were some beautiful 750-pound South Dakota steers that I don't know that I got a drop of manure on me. They were so docile and so responsive that they didn't care. They just took both alleys. They were happy that day. So depends on the stock, but I would say most commonly they go to the far alley. The farther one away gets used the most.
Oh, that's certainly what I've seen as well. So very good. I appreciate
a couple more, two more questions.
Yeah. Benita, I'm going to answer Brenda's question first, or address her question first. And then will you unmute Rex for me? I know Rex well enough to know that he's the kind of guy that likes to ask a question. So Brenda's question is related, piggyback off Kevin. Do you think the age of the cattle has to do with a solid or not solid alley on her operation? Let's see, calves and young cattle are easily distracted and getting excited, but her cows in the slatted, open-sided one move better with a person moving them from front to back. And so that's, I think, what Brenda's question is there a difference to that answer based on the type of cattle and age of cattle? So I guess I'll take a stab at part of it, which is there do you get different responses from the age of cattle? And the answer is absolutely. And so those young calves that Dr. Kip worked yesterday fed into that bud box super well because they responded really well to the pressure the handlers you provided. Sometimes those old cows get real cranky, but the other thing that I find, the feed yards get to build these big elaborate facilities, and because they use them every day all the time. But when you think about the lifespan of a productive cow and how many times she's going to go through the chute on your ranch, if she has a good positive experience the first time she gets worked as a heifer, and the second time and the third time, by the fourth or fifth time, it's kind of old hat and she doesn't necessarily mind doing it so much. But if she has a bad experience early on, then she's going to carry that with her for a while. I know they're not elephants, but they seem to remember things. They certainly remember when you leave a gate unlatched. So you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I of course I do, Jake. So on the cow-calf side, I get the privilege of being a part of some really good operations that way as well. And in one particular research setting, these cows go through, they were going through this facility, I think it was 24 different times for a project. and some of those projects required some biopsies, muscle biopsies and stuff like that. And we had to find, you're right. So, the first 1 or 2 times through was pretty good and everything was good. And then all of a sudden the third time through, there was a muscle biopsy, and that's even with anesthetics, it still is painful. And so we noticed that the 4th time through was not so good. So what we actually did is in some of those situations, we'll actually bring cattle up and actually just do dry runs with them. Our friends in Australia, they would never bring replacement heifers that they're going to start synchronizing through their facility without doing some dry runs with them first, just to get them used to the fact that they might have to come through that facility in the next 3 weeks about 3-4 times for whether it's injections or insertions and so forth. So training your cattle, I think when you have time and doing some certain things that way, make a big difference in your facilities. So again, it's not always just a facility. It's sometimes it's just how well you train them to get there.
Dr. Kipp, when you say dry run, what exactly does that look like? What do you mean there?
So we'll actually open. So say like if we have a hydraulic chute, we start everything up. We leave the hydraulic motor running. We just open everything up. And so that there's nothing there to stop the cattle. They get the opportunity to actually go through the facility, be moved through the facility, and exit the facility with nothing being done to them.
Yeah, very good. Okay, Rex, I think Benita's got you where you can talk with us. You want to ask your question?
Well, first I'll describe our system. It's an old Palco tub, and coming off of it is 2 sections of chute that have been replaced with a Temple Grandin type solid side B, because that was popular at the moment. I realize that Temple Grandin believes that nobody is capable of working around cattle, and so they're to make them blind. That did not work, and it's now a little bit more open than it used to be. But coming off of that tub, we bring the cattle down into the side of the tub, and 90 degrees goes straight ahead. 180 degrees, we turn around, we go back up to the shipping. And most of the trucks can handle like 5 to 7 in the front compartment, but they've got another compartment up there that handles 14 to 21. And if we run more than 7 cattle down our chute, the ones that are going back up the shipping thing at 180 degrees are enough to turn everybody in the alley around and bring them back into the top end of the box. So what are some suggestions about what we can do?
Yeah, that's
I wish Rex had a pencil drawing.
sounds like I should just make a trip to Gordon. I guess I think that's what he was
Oh, I'd be
asking.
delighted to let you come hunt some pheasants with me.
Hey, there we go. We can get on board with that. We can get on board with that. Well, I'm going to be less helpful on sort of on the spot with what we can do to sort of address the issue than I am sort of to circle back and say, that's what we were talking about. All right, so you have a setup where when you try and send, you can't send 15. And so that facility was not designed around the size of the trailer that you're loading. And consequently, you have issues loading trailers because there's not a good mesh there of the size of the trailer and the size of the facility. So that's doesn't really help you fix it. But the answer is there are some things that we can do and some considerations we could make without seeing exactly how it sits in the yard. And because one scenario is we extend that alleyway, right? We lengthen it to allow for more animals to go in there, but without seeing where it sits in the yard. Maybe that puts it into your garage or your machine shed or some other structure, or then it sticks out too far and you can't turn the trucks around. Like there's, I think I'm visualizing the component, but without seeing how it interacts with everything else, it's hard to provide a good solution. So sorry for not being any help, Rex.
Yeah, and Rex, I just to allude to Jake's comment though too is that if you do have sometimes, and I think this is later in Jake's presentation here, but if you do even have even just a simple drawing or sketch of what you have, and as I always tell our young men and women at the feed yards or on the ranch, is if they're really good at taking pictures and Snapchatting or texting those. Maybe just sketch that out on a napkin or a piece of paper and send it to either Jake or I or both. And maybe there's an opportunity to help you on that.
For sure. So, but it also segues into perfectly to kind of this, one of the next things I wanted to talk about, at least briefly. Again, thank you for all your questions. Appreciate you tuning in. And that's a little bit of kind of this design and planning process that that we get into, and whether that's an existing facility that we're considering modifications to, or a brand new facility and we get to start from scratch with something new. Kind of that first, that process starts mentally, right? You know your operation, you know your animals, you know your site, and so you've thought about it hundreds and thousands of times on you've had good days working cattle and bad days working cattle, and so sometimes it's hard to think through that, and just having someone to think through it with or provide a different perspective. I've never been to Rex's place, but I am certain that if I went there, that I would suggest some things that Rex had never thought of, because I view things differently than he has, who's been on that ranch a long time. Same with Dr. Kip. That's why part of the reason why I asked Dr. Kip to do this with me is because I'm more successful with my designs when I collaborate with the team. Like, if you get stuck in a rut because you see it every day and it's hard to sort of step back and see what could be because you're used to what is. And so that first step is really just thinking about, what do I have? What are my sort of known criteria? What do I want? And then how do we connect those A to B? The other thing here that I'll encourage you to think about is not only thinking about what are you doing today and how do we design or build or modify a facility for what you have today, but a lot of times those changes come with a cost. So as you absorb that cost into your operation, what are some things in your business or management style that you don't do today that you could do if you had the facilities to? So maybe you're a cow-calf operation and you have a son or daughter or niece or nephew that went to learn to be to AI school. Now maybe that was the plan, was to bring that young person back and integrate more of that into your own operation. But what if you had a facility that would allow them to develop that as a business, and maybe they were AI and heifers for their neighbors, maybe you were like Dave, you were raising heifers to sell. That's one thing that I think gets overlooked is it's not just a meeting your immediate needs, but when we're talking about facilities and the cost that is involved with them, whether that's a big operation or a small, what else do we want to do? What kind of future goals, and how does that integrate into your plan? The other thing that we deal with a lot is where do we put this thing? There's probably, and it sounds like in Rex's case, that facility sort of evolved over time and has changed. it's maybe always kind of been in the same spot. So one of the most challenging things is how do you, depending on the frequency of its use, is how do you build a facility in the same spot as your facility now and still be able to use the original facility? That's always one of the most challenging sort of construction projects, is building a new facility over top of an old one. It's a lot easier to take a blank canvas and start from scratch. And we, whenever we can, we try to do that, but that's not always practical because of those unique constraints. And so, but that's the reality. All right. So that initial, I just throw these up as sort of an example of what that conceptual design might look like. Sometimes this is the back of a notepad, and sometimes this comes to you in the middle of the night. Sometimes it's on the back of a barroom napkin. That's sometimes where these ideas come from. But this is exact same facility, and this is just some sketches. They came to us and said, we're thinking about doing something different. And one thing that I try to do, and I always have to do this a little bit cautiously, is I try to provide a design that is intentionally not what you told me you wanted. And it's not because I didn't listen to what you said the first time. It's because I want to get you thinking out of your sort of paradigm and consider things that maybe they don't make sense. But when you step back and start evaluating why they don't make sense, it either validates the path you're on, or it sort of churns up this creativity that helps you refine your original idea to something even better. So kind of this whole design process, as we're talking through it, one of the other things I always share is it's an iterative process, right? I never get it right. You never get it right the first time, but it's a lot easier to go through that process on paper, in your head, on the computer, than it is, well, we've got most of the posts set, and these gates don't swing the right way. It's a lot harder to fix that than when they're just lines and squares on the paper. So our process is really, that first step is get you thinking. And the second step is to get those ideas on paper and sort of start laying it out. And okay, our feed yard, we have 150 head pens and we have 200 head pens, and we usually work a pen at a time. And so our staging pens need to be certain size, or maybe we want to be able to work 2 pens at a time. And we just start kind of really creating the puzzle pieces, back to the 4 main components. So that chute, that crowding area, the staging pens, and a loadout. And we just sort of say, okay, what do we want these pieces to look like? And then it really is a puzzle of changing that configuration and moving them around and getting them sort of customized to a point where we like how the puzzle fits together. It's complete. So from there, with our customers, then we'll take it into this final design phase. And so now we've sort of established what it is we want to do, and this is really how to make it work. And the level of detail that needs to be obviously varies widely depending on on your needs, but it can be as detailed as, where does the light switch go? Where does every water line run? Where does every drain line run? How much rebar should be in the footing for this building? How many trusses do we have? How does the overhead door, here's one, how does the overhead door track interact with the post for my bud box? Because if I put that post in before I pour my floor, and a guy comes to put on the overhead door and that track doesn't go on there, we've got some problems, because we're just gonna get ready to jackhammer out a floor. So basically figuring out all all those details, the things engineers like that most people are like, yeah, we'll just do it. Spending some time there is certainly a savings over jackhammering a floor out. So that has happened before. I got a question here from Austin, and Austin's question is, what square footage in holding pens do you like to see for holding animals temporarily and for longer durations for shipping or processing cattle? You got a magic number, Dr. Kip?
Oh, yeah, I usually try to figure, Jake, 25 square feet for holding pens per animal. And then about 50, 55 square feet, like if you're going to do longer duration for comfort wise of shipping and processing is typically a good number to be shooting for. But if it's just for like staging pens for processing and things like that, 25, usually anywhere probably 20 to 25 square feet. 25 square feet if it's cow calf. You can probably get down to 18 to 20 if it's just feeder cattle and re-implants.
Yeah, just anything that gets much less than about 18, you just don't have room. But I think, Austin, you also, in your question, I think you're thinking about this the right way, and that's that depending on the duration, how long they're in that pen depends on how much space, you know, if they sit in there for an hour as you re-implant, they don't need near as much space. Same thing with access to feed and water. If you're going to unload calves overnight and let them sit for a day or two to acclimate before you process them, obviously we want to allow a significant more space than if they're sitting in there for an hour. So
it's probably dangerous to say on here, Jake, but I guess I'll say it. But I'm glad you brought up the water and the feed deal, because if cattle are going to be even in processing, if we know we got, say, 400 head, and we have 400 head staged back there, or 300 head staged, we know they're going to be there for longer than an hour. Having water access, I think today, if we're building new facilities, that's just something that we need to be thinking about and doing. And then the other thing is I know our constituents in Australia today, as you probably know, is that no feed yard gets built there without shade today. And so just things to be thinking about for a future.
absolutely. So kind of now we've figured out here how to make this work, and really where our customers have seen the benefit of that planning process is really in the construction process. And what I mean by that is time and time again, whether the operation is managing that construction themselves or they're hiring it done, the better quality of the plans you have to give to a contractor, the more quality bid you're going to get back in return. When you've got it a line item out to every nut and bolt that goes into that building, or every gate or every piece of equipment, those contractors and the people that are going to help you put this together are so much more comfortable in giving you a firm number of this is how many dollars it's going to cost to build this, instead of saying, well, you know, I want to build some pens over here, and we're thinking about 30 by 100, and let's just bring a load of continuous panels over, or continuous fencing over, and we'll just get started and see how it goes. You know, that's just it's just tough to do accurately. And on big projects where there's a financial component, it's you don't want to just hand out checks in your business. And so you need to have a good plan so you can have a good understanding of what kind of costs. And then it also allows you to make modifications, right? So this design is iterative. Very seldom do we build maybe what we start with from a budget standpoint, right? So you get, I've never given a proposal to a customer and they'd be like, really, is that all? That's it? Okay, well, let's get started. You know, it's always like, well, that's a little more than I was thinking. And so we're gonna have to cut some things out. And then it's a discussion of, okay, what infrastructure is critical and what extra, where do I cut and where do I save? And what am I adamant that I have to have? And where can I make sacrifices to make this project more affordable? There's that piece too. It's sort of like, okay, well, we planned out exactly what we wanted to do, and it costs about twice as much as we wanted to spend. So, and maybe that means that we design it in a fashion that you can build it in phases, right? Or maybe it's we've added some features in that maybe weren't necessary, and we can cut some things out. But that's the reality, and I think I think most of you already know that. So I've got a few pictures that I want to share with you. I know we're already over time. I don't know if I'm sure if you're busy and you need to leave, I thank you for joining us. But until somebody kicks us out, you guys can't talk, so you can't boo us. So we're just going to keep rolling through this a little bit. Just one tool that's been really popular with our customers is taking that 2D sheet, which is sometimes hard to read. Like if you're not in a field where you review plans, like that's sometimes just intimidating to look at that sheet and say, I don't understand what this means. And so as the technology and software has advanced, these 3D renderings have been super popular because it gives you an opportunity to see what this is going to look like before it happens. And so this is a rendering we did last fall, and that's the same facility on Tuesday. This is a facility down in the Texas Panhandle. So different perspective. Again, this was taken this week. And then here's from inside of the building. And they've got the Daniel set, not bud box, not completed. Obviously, there's a vet room and office space, finished space in here. They're starting to frame on that. So that's the kind of the rendering, and that's what it looks like. And it's pretty cool when that can come together. A project can come together like that. This is sort of also the before and after view, but this is a little bit different perspective. Customer had a working facility that they really liked. This is a tubbed and curved alleyway setup. They loved it. It was a good match for them. But it's really sucked to use it in inclement weather because it's not covered and there wasn't much concrete poured around it. And it was always, the pens were always muddy around it. And it was just, they liked the equipment they had and they didn't like anything else about it. So we're in the process of building a building over here. There's a bunch of paving that got done. We redid this alleyway, all new fencing, sort pens, staging pens, and completely revamped that. Here's another one. This is sort of the before, obviously a larger setup where they've got the ability to load several trucks at a time. And here's sort of the after. So we kept that functionality, relocated it and kind of condensed it in a way that allowed us to put a new processing barn, staging pens, bud box, alleyway, chute, and some sorting pens outside. So here's one. The other thing that we experienced too is, and I talked a little bit about, what opportunities does a new facility or a modified facility allow your operation, big or small? This is a small feed yard that, as part of an expansion to the feed yard, knew that they had to upgrade their facilities. And so This west end is a kind of a covered, couple of small sick pens, and they built a new processing barn. This one, actually, there's one bud box, but there's 2 alleyways. So as you go west, you go to the chute, and as you go east, you go to the loadout. And so semis actually back up to the building, and they've got their stock trailer parked there as well right now. Just as we kind of bring this thing to a close, and then we'll take I think there's a question in here, and we'll take any more that you guys come up with. The other thing is, no matter how nice your facility is the first day, it's gonna have wear and tear on things, and the better we can do designing in features that allow you to take care of it. I can't think of anybody that I know that would buy a new car and never wash it. If you spend that kind of money and make that kind of investment, it only makes sense to take care and protect that investment. And so this is one feature that I just wanted to highlight that is super popular. Our experience has been that the easier you make it for the people to clean the barn, the cleaner the barn stays. And so kind of the way we've done that is we've integrated a drain system into the facility. It's a little hard to see because of the brightness of through the door there, but this is the area the chute sits, and it's that same area that we talked about, recessing that chute so it's zero entry. We also basically create a waste pit underneath of it, and plumbed into that waste. Obviously, if there's a chute setting over the top of it, you can't get under there to clean it out. And so how does that happen? Well, there's a valve and an underground water line plumbed into that, and it works just like a toilet. So whenever you're working cattle, you can open that valve, and that runs, and that can run water through this entire system. Some of them are plumbed into all the drains that way. Some of them aren't. Usually we find that this is the hardest one to clean out. These other ones are about 12 inches wide and about a foot or so deep. Right now the pipes are, in this sort of construction process, the pipes are stubbed up, but they'll get cut off. And that's all connected into an underground drain system. Once you get some water moving through there, that cleans up really nice. The other thing that product that we found that works really well is, regardless of where the wash gray is or drain system is, anybody who's ever tried to lift one of those big heavy steel grates knows that it's not much fun. And so consequently, that that grate doesn't get lifted off there very often. So we actually use a product that's made of fiberglass that's super lightweight, and they're cut into lengths that are easily, you can pop them right out, send them to the side, clean it out really good, clean that drain out, make sure you wash anything that gets to the drain, send it down, send it on its way. And just by having that change from a big heavy steel grate to a light fiberglass one, like it's unbelievable how big of a difference that makes. And then the last thing is, usually in our processing barns, we use a 2-system wash down. For those of you who have hogs or are familiar with hogs, it's something maybe we stole from the hog industry on how they clean those barns down, which is basically a large volume soaker hose and get everything good and wet, and then come back with a high pressure system. So this is connected back into like a hot seat power washer that allows you to clean, get everything good and wet, power wash it down, nice and clean and ready to go for the next time. So just it's things like that make the long-term maintenance, service, and repairs just a little bit easier to prolong the longevity of these sorts of facilities. So
Jake, there's some questions here that people are asking. One is as a contractor, to see 3D view would be helpful as far as seeing the big picture. For sure, I think that's 3D views and where you can plot them on like a Google Earth type image of the actual place. Just gives that real life image of what they're actually going through. And I know I've certainly appreciated those as well. Just to see it prior to it being built.
There's some pretty cool technology anymore. Almost all the survey work that we do is in a state plane coordinate system. And so when we're done, we can actually export that as a KMZ file, which imports to Google Earth, right? So if you've ever used Google Earth, like I can literally export a CAD file that you can open without AutoCAD, and you can see the line work on your place and how it fits in relationship to other buildings or other infrastructure. And so, yeah, it's been a huge asset to us.
Yeah. And then David Neville asked, can you talk a little more about build/design of the bud box? And I'm wondering if he's David, if you're there, if more specifically is just and maybe you're getting the gist of the question there, Jake, but I don't know if he's asking for dimensions or the concept or what. If he wants the concept, I can certainly show the bud box in action if you'd like, but I got video of that that we can share. But
maybe Benita can unmute David for us, and he can ask us. I want to make sure I get
concept in action, he said.
Concept in action. Gotcha. Yeah. So if do you still have that video up?
Yeah. I can grab it up here.
All right, we're gonna switch presenters real quick. I think while you're doing that, I'm gonna try to take a stab at this next next question. Oh, here we go.
So here would be a bud box in a shipping facility. I'll get there. There, is that better? You see all that okay? But this is the trucker. He's on the outside of the box. This is just getting voluntary flow. This is he's loading the very back end of the trailer. I think there was about eight head there. The bud box there, like that other video of that where we'd have 14 or 15, because usually we could get 14 to 15 head on the top deck or in the bottom deck on fats going in there. So, but that just shows loading the very back. I have another one here. I think it's this one here. Yep. So this is just another processing area, David, where cattle, the bud box and bud tub type deals that we do today is taking advantage of just natural instincts of cattle. So once they reach a dead end or dead point, they tend to like to return where they came from. And so this is just putting the handler on the inside corner of the cattle. And our whole concept with Bud Williams has always been about voluntary movement and voluntary actions of the stock. And so that's why these types of facilities work so nice in that. And what makes this one really special, I told Jake earlier, in this particular processing barn, there's cameras up all around this barn, and they go to the local prison because our workers at that particular facility are all inmates. And so that young man there that was running that bud box has no livestock experience at all, which is, to me, is really, really awesome. There you go. Go ahead.
No, I just while you were talking, I was trying to switch it back. So
Okay.
no, I wasn't trying to interrupt you.
No. So I just think that's really neat that in terms of sometimes experience definitely matters, but getting the people in the right spot and teaching them and we talked a little bit about earlier about ability to change is good, but it's the most difficult thing to do as well. So
I'm going to skip this. Austin had another question for us. It says, seem to be big fans of the bud box concept. That I've noticed one issue that Austin sees is there's not a safe option to give that stubborn animal that seemingly can't find the hole through that facility. What's your guys' solution to that scenario?
Can I show you more? Show them one more video.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
I guess my answer to that is that's not necessarily the fault of the facility, right? So if there's an animal that isn't responding, I'm not sure that that's necessarily the fault of the facility. My initial reaction is why can't that animal find the hole? Why can't he see it? I usually say it's my own fault as the handler, as the operator of that bud box. Did I bring too many? Did I bring them too fast? Did I bring them too slow? Did I put too much pressure on one? Did I not put enough pressure on one? Austin, you're absolutely right. There's nothing worse than one steer or one cow in a bud box. That's really hard to make that. So what's the solution? I would say the solution is to let them out and go back and bring another group and try a second time. That would be my solution. I've also seen scenarios where guys will weld the second gate that you can kind of apply some pressure by swinging a gate with you to maybe direct their attention a little bit more. But when there's, for whatever reason, there's a sort of a break in that flow through that system, you're right, you have a problem there. And that's not always an easy problem to fix.
Yeah, and Jake, I've done what you suggested there, and somehow inevitably sometimes that animal ends up at the very end and he's the last one.
Yep.
And so Austin, there's some things there that Bud has taught me, and Bud's passed here now, I think 5 years ago, but there's things that with your eyes and with your body position and so forth from the outside of the box that you can do, and you can always look as to where you want the animal to go. It's hard for me to describe, but we would make kind of if you're standing still, this gets really deep, so I apologize, but if you're standing still and your feet aren't moving, you can't expect the animal to move either. And so Bud would teach me to just sit there and walk in place, but be looking where I wanted the animal to go. And oftentimes he'd have me place at the backside of the bud box in doing that. And eventually that animal would get so tired of my ugly face that he'd turn and he'd actually go and look down that double alley and go down it. So when I ran into those positions, that's what I've went to, and that's always worked for me. Doesn't always work for everybody else. It just depends on your patient and your tolerance level, I guess, to some degree. But those are things that I've had to do, especially if I didn't have Jake a swing gate in there or something. I mean, now you're stuck with a 14-foot by 30-foot box and you have one single animal. The other thing I would say is there's no animal that's worth getting injured or killed over. And so in those situations, sometimes we just have to say, is he really worth implanting today? I mean, we'll just mark it up as a missed implant, I guess, and move on. But I do know sometimes we have to get them worked. There are facilities for safety wise too, and that's where tubs do come in sometimes. I used to not be such a big tub fan, but today I guess I can go either way, as long as the design is correct and the concepts are held in check. And so if ever interested, I do have videos of those as well that certainly can lend you some support on how to do that.
All right, I got another question here from Kane. Jake, could you touch on the effects light has both inside facilities and outside in regards to how cattle handle, such as traditional lighting coming into a facility. So yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, light plays a big factor in how we ask cattle to move and where we ask them to move to. They don't like to jump into dark places. They don't like big light transitions. So if it's dark outside, it's easier to draw them into a well lit area so they have that visual and they can see a clear path for where they're going. So absolutely. One thing that we usually try and do is especially if we're in a building, is not only will we have a door at the entrance of the bud box, but we usually put a door on the reciprocal side. And as weather allows, we'll leave both of those doors open, and that light will and the visual for them, actually they feel like they just get to keep going. And so when they get to the end of that bud box, okay, well, I can't keep going. Well, I know where I came from. And so my response is I'm going to move backwards. Well, in the meantime, we've closed the gate and directed their attention to the outlet, which is exactly where we wanted to go. And so that voluntary movement, moves them through the system. So that's a good question, Kane. All right, we've got one here from Cole. Cole strongly dislikes tubs, but I find it very difficult to find and train help on the simplicity of the bud box system. So would a bud tub system be suitable to still have the flow concept, but not have to train a person on how to move with cattle? Yeah, I don't know if it matters what field you're in. It's always a challenge to find good help. And as Dr. Kipp alluded to with the yard, one of his customers that relies on the help of some inmates, it's almost a benefit when people don't have experience because they don't have bad habits. And so you can kind of mold them into what you want there. But I think the answer to your question, Cole, is yes. That's maybe again back to where we started with. This is our most successful systems are ones that sort of lend to that three-way interaction of the humans, the animals, and the facility. And so if you're not the one running that, if you're up there running the chute and you have a hired man that's back there in that bud box, and it's not the right person, yeah, you can have some bad outcomes. And so maybe that isn't the right setup for your particular operation.
Yeah, the Cole, I completely understand what you're saying. I get the privilege of every day getting to work with people on these concepts, and in fact, I had a guy tell me just the other day, and he owns the yard. But he had told me he understands the entire concept. However, what's difficult for him is he does not see the same things that I see, and in terms of how I respond or how I interact with the animal. And he acknowledged that because of what I can see and anticipate, that it tends to always put me in a better position and in a better outcome. And as he says, some of us are, we're very, we like the lines, we understand the lines, but we just don't always know how to read the body language that we're given. And that's what makes sometimes these concepts a little bit more difficult, because you really are asking for people to interact and read body language without verbal communication. It'd be like Jake giving this presentation tonight without being able to talk. It would have went a lot faster.
Yeah, it would have been a lot shorter too. I keep glancing at the clock and realize that we've taken up a lot of your time tonight. And I sure appreciate those of you that have stuck around with us here as we're getting towards the end. This is really, I just wanted to come full circle, that all facilities have come in all different shapes and sizes. Good stockmanship can overcome poor facilities, but good facilities cannot overcome poor stockmanship. And the best ones are the ones where we have that positive three-way interaction, and people in the cattle are safe and comfortable. So I think planning can be a tremendous asset in designing a facility. If we can ever be a resource to help, I'd love the opportunity to visit with you. Again, whether you've got 6 show steers out in the barn or you run a 50,000 head feed yard, I think we'd be happy to visit with you about what's going on. I wanted to give a few thank yous here, and we'll stick around for questions as long as you want to stay. Again, for Nebraska Cattlemen for putting this all together and organizing it. Dr. Kipp, thanks for being my counterpart here tonight, and your expertise and perspective. Always appreciate that. Dr. Kipp's talked a lot about Bud Williams tonight, who he knew personally and had a big influence on his life. I've had a few mentors in my life that have gotten me where I am. I've learned a lot more from listening than talking, and so this is I'm more comfortable on the other side of the screen. But if I can help you out, that's really what I'd like to do. If you're still paying attention, there's a photograph on the screen of a gentleman by the name of Dr. Gordon Hazard. Dr. Hazard was a veterinarian. He passed away a few years ago. But when I was in grad school at Mississippi State, I had the privilege of running over once in a while the prairie livestock in West Point, Mississippi, and hang out with Dr. Hazard once in a while. And that man forgot more about grazing stock or cattle than I could learn in 10 lifetimes. And it's just trying to be a sponge as much as possible. I don't know if he's on here or not. I don't want to get all mushy, but I think my dad's on here too. Actually, the way I got to know Dr. Kipp is my dad's a consulting veterinarian and works for Merck Animal Health, and got to know quite a few veterinarians and come to know that they're not such bad guys. And I actually learned a lot from them, and I've learned a lot from Dr. Kipp, and I've learned a lot from my dad. And so appreciate you guys and the role you played in my life. So if there's anything that we can do, or you ever just want to talk, this is how to get a hold of us. We'd love for you to reach out and be an asset and a resource to you. So looks like we got a few.
Yeah. Real quick there, Jake, I will just say is before everybody does leave completely, but because I have had the opportunity to work with Jake and Dean and the Settje group on quite a few things, and they're just a true professional group and of people that we get to interact with, and certainly appreciate their support. They've supported Dr. Tom and I and Bud Williams throughout the years in our concepts, and we certainly appreciate that. And to that, Austin, on your comment there of, you do agree with a lot of the bud box concepts and so forth, and that the new hybrid bud tubs and those things, I know there's people building those. Once they got concept of some of the ones that we initially drew and had companies help build, you're right. Those things have really taken off, and I do got video of those as well, and they are great as a adjunct to the bud box, and so both of them work. I think both facilities. It just kind of goes back to the chute question, Jake. Is that I think there's a lot of chutes that are great and they work, and I don't necessarily have a preference. I have a preference on the concept, as long as things are built within the concept, I guess is the point. So I do agree with that.
Well, and the other thing, you talked about how change being hard. I don't do same things. I try to learn something from every project, and I don't do the same things the same that I did a year ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And so as we move forward and learn more about that animal human interaction, and we can develop new concepts and new things. You know, there was a time where none of this topic really didn't even exist, you know, so much. Working facilities were old dip vats, right? I mean, that's we kind of come a long ways from there, and the technology and the systems that we can design and build. And so I don't see that changing moving forward, because every time we build a facility, we integrate some new ideas, and so each one's better than the last. So absolutely. It looks like David was looking for some videos. David, we'll get your contact information, and we can definitely share those with you.
I wrote his email down too, Jake. If he's after a couple of those videos I showed, I can
Yeah.
provide.
I think so. Matt says, thanks for putting this together. Yeah, I appreciate you being here tonight. Jeremy says, use a bud box with open panels. Would there be an advantage in making that solid to where the cattle couldn't see activities outside the box and focus on opening to the alley? Potentially, yeah, back to the politician answer. Potentially, it depends what those outside activities are. If the outside activities are potentially a handler that's asking that animal to respond to the pressure they're applying from outside the box, like we saw in the video with the truck driver, then I would say no, because that restricts your ability. But depending on what else is going on there, that certainly has a place. So without knowing the whole context, I can't answer for certain, but there definitely is a possibility that would be the case. So, yeah.
I do want to follow up with one of Jake's comments about making sure that the people and the cattle are safe. We are having a Bqa webinar on Tuesday, March 19th with Jesse Fulton, who is the new director of Bqa for the University of Nebraska. So watch for information coming on that. Encourage you guys to attend that, learn a little bit about the future of the Bqa program in Nebraska, and hear and see why it's important to be Bqa certified.
All right, I'll wait just a few more seconds if somebody thinks of anything. Otherwise, you've got kind of contact information for our company. You can get contact information from Benita or call our office or whatever. Like we want to be, we want to help. We want to be an asset to you. And so if there's ever anything you can do, we can do to help, please let us know. So like I said, I'll stick around for